Thanks so much for you all for taking the time today to um, be with us and hear from our some dairy farmers. And thanks, Olga, and our guests for providing us with this opportunity to work with our producer partners and working on increasing demand for the regional organic dairy products. As we go, we will have, I can't see the chat right now. I just have a couple of slides. Um, but if you can you can introduce yourself in the chat. And as we go, if you want to note any questions, we'll have time for other questions as well, but you can put them there if you wish. And just before we get started, I want to remind people about our annual meeting, NFCA's annual meeting that's coming up in March 15th. And please save the date if you haven't already, put it on your calendar. And we'd like to have this, well, every year we have this opportunity for the member gathering and for networking and panels and workshops, and we're in the midst of planning that. This day-long event is supported by our member dues. It's free to our members, and we encourage our general managers to attend along with their board presidents and 1 to 2 other additional leaders from your board or staff. So if you're not a general manager, you know, reach out to them and let them know you'd be interested in attending. Let's see, registration information will go out in February. And let's see. Okay, our theme for the day is the second United Nations International Year of the Cooperatives 2025, which is the aim to raise awareness, promote growth, and inspire leadership in the cooperative movement. This international year is an opportunity to highlight the contributions of co-ops in the advancement of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, by 2030. In particular, the role of co-ops in providing good jobs, hunger alleviation, and financial inclusion. And you can go to our website, and I'll put that in the chat afterwards, and for more information and resources particular to the ICA. And let's see. You can see see all of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals on the UN website. I'll put that in the chat as well. But I want to call out this one in particular, responsible consumption and production, which is relevant to today's discussion, and that our co-ops are contributing in multiple ways to this SDG, and with other areas, but also with their participation as NOFFP retail partners. So we are very happy to report that in the last few months, we've had some additional members that have joined as retail partners. And continuing the work, we now have 27 NFCA partners, co-ops as retail partners. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Olga to do some introductions and give us a little update on NOFFP. And I just want to say thanks again so much for everyone for being able to be with us this afternoon for the next hour.
Awesome.
And also, Olga, I can go to the next slide, or whenever you're ready to share the producers.
Yeah, give me just a second. You can stay right here for
Sure.
a moment. Hi, everybody.
Okay.
I'm Olga Moriarty. I don't know everyone on this call, so I'm just going to put you on the spot and say, can you all either put in the chat or what co-ops are you representing? That would be really helpful for me. But I'm the executive director for the for the partnership, as I shorten it, the Northeast Organic Family Farm Partnership. And I assume you're all here because you are familiar with our initiative already. Suzette and Urban at NFCA have been incredible champions for us. I can say Urban joined our board kind of as soon as we launched in 2022 and has been a really great source of, a resource for us as we're trying to understand the needs of the co-ops. And when I say co-op, I'm talking about the food co-ops. We also have dairy farmer co-op members who are here. So that's what I mean when I'm saying that. You all are um, really, I was telling Suzette this before we started recording, but our goal is to increase the demand for organic dairy in the region made by organic farmers, whether they are selling to a truck that goes, to Stonyfield or to Organic Valley, or are going directly to you all. And yesterday I was visiting one of those processors who's selling directly to co-ops, and he said to me that without the co-ops, without the dairy buyers in these co-ops, that his processing business, his creamery, would be out of business. That there is no one else in the food system who is as supportive and as cooperative and as loyal and dedicated to helping small producers as the co-ops are. So I'm just passing that message along. I was at the annual meeting last year for NFCA, and I was in one of those breakout groups, and they were talking about, how can we do better? What are the initiatives we need to work on to improve, what we're doing? And I said, I just want to let you know you're doing a lot as it is. Just supporting these small producers is enormous. And so I just want to thank you. And on behalf of so many of these brands that we work with, I continue, to applaud your efforts, and anything we can do to help you in navigating the challenges that you have every day, please let us know, because we're talking to brands every day. I'm very excited that this list here of all of the NFCA co-ops who are joining, there's a few that are still out there who haven't joined the initiative officially, but we're really, really happy to have this group sort of on board with us, standing next to our farmers who are working so hard in the region. And yes, Suzette, if you could go to the next slide. I'm just going to do a quick reminder, and then I'm going to introduce our farmers who are here, which are way more interesting to hear from than me. This slide has the logos of the brands that our partnership is working to promote. And we're doing this, with our retail partners like you. We're also doing this just direct to consumers when we're talking to people at, festivals and farmers markets and in your stores, that these are the brands that are doing the really hard work, supporting local farmers with really great organic dairying throughout our region, which we're working, Eastern New York, Hudson Valley, all the way up through Maine. So today we have two farmers that are here, but I would love to invite more farmers to talk from their perspectives, but I'm going to put Anthony, and Annie a little bit on the spot, because they're going to be sort of speaking for lots of farmers today in just what it means to be an organic dairy farmer in the Northeast. And I think it's really helpful for those of you at the co-ops to, and thank you for being here, just like your curiosity to be here and learn more. You are the people who we are hoping to engage with as much as possible. Abigail is here too, who is on our staff, and she's our field coordinator. You're probably all familiar with her. She's been doing such an awesome job with her outreach, where we are here to answer your questions so that there's less guessing of what's on the shelf, where does it come from, what are those growing practices, what does it mean to be organic. I have talked to a few different dairy buyers at stores in my own community, where I'll be there and shopping myself, and I'll be sort of bringing all the products to the front. And I'm amazed at how many people just don't understand which ones are organic and which ones aren't. And not that it's just something to work on, right? It's something to say, oh, that USDA label, what does that mean? Or what does the Real Organic Project label mean? What do these labels mean? So we're here to kind of answer some of those questions and demystify. So I asked I wanted to represent, from this list that you're looking at are all these brands. There's two. You can keep it off. That's fine, Suzette. There is the two major buyers of organic dairy in the Northeast. Stonyfield and Organic Valley are the only two, and upstate Niagara in northern Vermont. But really, for the purposes of here, we're talking about Stonyfield and Organic Valley. We had Horizon, they're gone. And I would say that a lot of the milk that is put on trucks for Organic Valley ends up at the Stonyfield plant in Londonderry, New Hampshire, and made into yogurt. And not everybody knows that. So I always tell consumers if they're curious when they say, Organic Valley is not local. And I'll say, well, Organic Valley buys milk from more farms in the Northeast than anybody else. And they are directly supporting the small family farms in our own neighborhoods. And that milk is going to Stonyfield and it is being made into the quarts of yogurt that you're selling at your stores. So I think it's important to let consumers just know that so they have more information in making their decisions. And Annie Watson is here today. She is a farmer, first generation farmer in Whitefield, Maine, who is one of those, commodity milk farmers who is selling to a truck. And I wanted to just start with that perspective. And then after Annie, we can have Anthony and Erica, who are here from Butterworks, which is, a family that has a creamery making yogurt. But I wanted to start first with the majority of our farms in the Northeast are selling to trucks. And so Annie's here to sort of talk about that. So Annie, do you want to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your farm just to start?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Never know with Zoom. It's nice to see all of your faces today. My name is Annie Watson. I am co-owner of Sheepscot Valley Farm, and we're located in Whitefield, Maine, just up the road from Rising Tide Co-op. As a matter of fact, I'm a member of that co-op. So hello, nice to see you, Shannon. So I farm with my husband, Michael Moody. He and I purchased our farm together almost 12 years ago in May. We farm, I like to say, with our three small children, though they are not exactly helpful at this stage of life, but we have a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 4-year-old. We, as I said, purchased our farm in 2013, and we purchased the farm as an organic dairy farm. And so we immediately went into, were able to access our market, which is with the Organic Valley Co-op. But as Olga said, actually all of the organic milk that's sold wholesale in Maine goes to Stonyfield, regardless of whether you're shipping directly to Stonyfield or whether you ship through the co-op Organic Valley. So we milk about 70 Holsteins. We practice intensive rotational grazing, meaning our cows are out on a fresh pasture at least every 12 hours. We honestly we bought this farm because it had a good market. And at the time, the price was a solid price. We wrote a full-scale business plan, as we do every time we make an investment on our farm, especially. And we saw that there was a real opportunity to farm in a small way without having to get gigantic and actually make a decent living. Past 12 years has seen, really major ups and downs in this industry. But we have always on our farm tried to focus on being innovative and making targeted investments into our cow comfort and our milking facilities. And we've built a couple barns. We've done a tremendous amount in 12 years, all to get to to be in a more sustainable position financially, as well as for our climate goals. And in the past 12 years, those goals have obviously become, very important. And we have found that our organic system is one that we support philosophically, as well as, for the main reasons we got into it. So we take good pride in our quality, our cow comfort, as I said, our employee comfort. We like to be sure that we've got all of our employees, which we have 4 part-time employees at the moment, and it's my husband and myself, as I said. So we've really tried to make sure that everyone's quality of life is relatively sustainable, because this is a commitment like no other, frankly. We milk every single day, 365 days a year, twice a day. So that being said, we milk Holsteins, so the black and white spotted cows. We ship about 1.4 million pounds of milk a year, which is about 163,000 gallons. Milk is measured at the farm level in pounds because it doesn't all end up as fluid milk necessarily. So that's, I'm trying to give a little bit of context to how we speak about it as dairy farmers as compared to how you would speak about it as customers. So yeah, like I said, we have really prided ourselves in trying to adapt and stay ahead of the curve in terms of our sustainability goals, as well as our labor standards and cow comfort. Cow comfort is key. I mean, I like to joke that we had curtains on our barn before we had curtains in our house, because it's that important to our cows to have climate controlled temperatures in their barn. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself, but I don't know, Olga, if you have any specific questions you wanted to.
So I feel like Annie's in a unique position because like we hear from so many farms who it's a third, fourth, fifth generation farm. Annie's also a woman farmer. There are lots of like very unique, awesome things about this farm. I would say I want to ask you pointedly about your organic certification. I mean, you're explaining, it sounds like it's values based, but it's also an economic decision for being certified. But can you explain? And I will say to everyone here, please put in questions. Like I was going to ask you all, like, what's the number one thing you're hearing in, the dairy aisle from consumers? Like, what is that question that they ask you? But one of the things that I'm seeing when I talk to dairy buyers is like, what's the real difference between organic and non-organic? So Annie, from your perspective, can you say where the actual certification drives decisions on your farm?
Sure. So, well, basically the parameters that are the most different when it comes to organic and conventional is that we have no antibiotic use at all on our farms. Meaning if we treat a cow with antibiotics, we have to remove the cow from the farm. The other piece is that our pasture and the dry matter intake, meaning how much a cow feeds itself, is also really specific in that the cows have to be able to feed themselves at least 30% of their diet for at least 120 days a year. So that makes our pasture-based systems such an important part of the whole system of our farm. We're not just going out and making hay or growing corn and then bringing it back to the farm to feed. We need to be sure that our pastures have a good mix of variety of feed in them. And we also have to make sure that those cows are getting the best possible nutrients when they do go out to pasture, which is usually the beginning of May. Mother's Day is typically a good time that we let all of the cows out. And then they don't come back into the barn for the winter technically until around like mid-November usually. That season seems to be changing and prolonging as sort of our climate adapts and changes and shifts. But those are, I would say, the biggest differences. I mean, we also have so many sort of rules and regulations in terms of cow comfort, calf care. And I think for us, we have tried to utilize sort of the natural rhythms of the cows and of our farm. And that seems to be part of like the organic system of management, to be perfectly honest. Like it's all we work in cycles. So all conventional dairy farmers also work in cycles, whether it's, your reproduction cycle, your feed cycle, all of those different things. But we, as organic dairy farmers, have to be much more in tune with what is happening on our land and what is also happening with our cows at the same time, and how that is a cycle that works in tandem. And so I could really get into the weeds of all of it, but I won't. But those are I would say the major differences. So one of the other pieces is that our organic dairy farms, because we require so much pasture for our herds, we're really, we're limited in the size that we can get. So we can't, for instance, we have about 40 acres of pasture across the road that we pasture, some of our milking herd on. So they cross the road every day. And then we have pasture behind our farm and they spend the night we don't have to cross them in the dark, essentially. But the pasture base we have for our milking herd dictates how many cows we can actually milk. So on our farm where we have a conventional farm next door and we have a organic vegetable farm next door. We only own about 100 acres just ourselves in our little plot. We can't get to be a 500,000 cow organic farm because we don't have the access to pasture, and that's pretty typical for most of the farms in the Northeast. They are very much, their size is dictated by the amount of land they have access to directly, because at the end of the day, we have to get our cows back to be milked twice a day. So they can't be so far off in pasture that it takes them, 6 hours to walk back. So it is kind of one of the really unique pieces of being an organic dairy farmer, especially in the Northeast, where we don't have necessarily like large swaths of farmland that are just available for us to pasture on or put our farm right in the middle of. So it can be a challenge, but it's a challenge that's worth trying to overcome.
Thanks, Annie. Hi, Jane. Good to see you here too. I'm not remembering you. So just, and two things that made me think of, and then we're going to just switch and then we'll be able to have questions after. But, generalization here, but organic cows on an organic farm versus non-organic farms, tend to live like twice as long. And the reason for that is because there's such attention paid to preventative health and the comfort that Annie is talking about. So these cows, and it's just, somebody was asking me this yesterday. I was at another processor. He's like, this is a 12-year-old cow here. And that 12-year-old cow is happy. And just like Anthony was saying earlier, like the cows are happy outside right now in the barn where they're protected. And when you get the temperature just right and you get the conditions just right, they're happy. They live longer. There's just, there's better health on these farms. So, and this is, yeah, and I'll just leave it at that. But, and the other thing I wanted to mention, and Annie, we can touch upon this later, but, Organic Valley is buying milk from about 110 farms in New England. Stonyfield has about 45 direct suppliers. So these two buyers are supporting the majority of the organic farms in the Northeast. And I have had people come to me and say, if it's so hard for the dairy farms, why don't they just process themselves? Like, why don't they just make their own yogurt? Well, we can explain the complexities of doing that with Anthony and Erica, who are here from Butterworks. But I will say we need our commodity milk farmers, just like we need our, single farm processor creamery folks. Like we need both. And we reliant on each other because they are supporting a system so that all of the dairy farmers, as well as our conventional dairy farmers, we need all of these farmers so that our farming system stays afloat, so that we don't have to rely on milk and dairy that's coming from outside of the region, which is, I think we all can probably agree, we just don't want to see that happen. So I'm going to pass things now over. And I'm some of you have probably not met Anthony Calderero, but Anthony is the new owner of Butterworks Organic Farm in Vermont, the wonderful producer of legendary organic yogurt that you're probably all very familiar with. And Erica Wilson is here as well. Erica is I think farm manager is your title. I'm not sure if that's still the title, but has been with the farm for a long time. We are all super excited to see Butterworks in this new chapter. And I've been really enjoying, conversations with both Anthony and Erica and trying to figure out where is Butterworks going, some new products on the horizon, and obviously like a dedication to keeping the standard that we're all loving and our customers love. So I'm going to throw it to you, Anthony, if you wouldn't mind. And if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, and then for those of us, it's good to hear just the history of Butterworks. If you could start there, that would be great.
Sure, no problem. My name's Anthony Calderero. I purchased Butterworks Farm on August 9th of 2024 from the Laser family. I'm sure everybody here on this call probably knows the Laser family. Everywhere I go, everybody speaks very highly of Jack and how they met him, and pretty much everybody I've ever talked to has a story about a time they spent with Jack, which is really just, a great legacy to kind of carry on. And so, one thing I can promise everybody here with me buying the farm, We will continue the legacy that Jack and Ann started. It's very important to me that we produce healthy food. And, yeah, we're organic. Yeah, we're 100% grass fed. But anything we can do to make our food healthier, we are going to do. One of my interests in buying the farm was the health in this country and just seeing the decline. And when I found this farm, that did it the right way, I was really drawn in and say, this is something I have to purchase and this is something I have to retain. Because as as Annie mentioned, when you run 100% grass-fed herd, you're not going to grow the way other farms will with grain herds. You're limited by the space, like she said. I think our story is pretty comparable. We're right about at 100 acres also. So that means for our farm, the most cows we'll probably get at any point will be 60 cows. And that's 60 if we milk all 60, right? So everybody looks at 100% grass fed and sees the price and like, wow, how come it's so expensive? That's why. So for the health of, what we are saying is we're willing to make a premium product that costs more because to me, the health and what we put in our body is more important than me driving higher profit margin and giving grain and producing. I'm not going to knock other organic farms. We're all on the same side, and I appreciate what they do. But I'm just saying, from the point of selling 100% grass-fed product, it's going to be more expensive. And it's amazing to me. I've been doing demos in the stores. When I get out and I relay that message, how many people don't realize why 100% grass-fed is important. So, that's really the message I've been going out with. We do practice regenerative agriculture. Jack was a pioneer on that subject. So we have definitely been retaining that on the farm. And I'll let Erica talk more about the day to day at the farm because she's a lot more well versed at it than I am. So.
And I'll just, Erica, I think it's, if you could focus on this question of like, what is it like to actually be a farmer processor? I think that would be great. And I will say that, it's not a requirement for an organic dairy to be 100% grass-fed. As Annie was saying, that there's a percentage of their diet that must come from pasturing. And many of our organic farms, all organic farms are feeding their cows organic hay, and some, not all of them, but those who do grain, it's always organic, and it's usually it's a smaller fraction of their diet than they're getting like from the grass and hay that they're consuming. And there are lots of complexities as to why farmers choose to be either 100% grass-fed or using grain. And I will say the number one, I would say, reason why farmers are using grain is because it directly affects the health of their cows. If they have, and Annie, you can speak to that later if you want to, but I don't want to talk too much more. So Erica, if you could explain about the challenges, the intricacies that come with being a processor, that would be wonderful.
Do you want me to handle the question, Ola?
Yeah, Erica, let us know when you get it undone. Go ahead, Anthony. Let us know some of the complexities of like balancing milk. I think that's a really good thing to talk about.
Sure. So again, I'm not as well versed at it as Erica would be, but you know, obviously the struggle for us on the milk side is, and probably most of you know that who carry our product, heavy cream is by far our, everybody loves our heavy cream. I've had so many stories where actually some of the stores were putting it on the back shelf for people who were asking for it because they wanted to make sure that they had it that day, and people actually coming in and screaming at the store because it wasn't there. So the hard part with the heavy cream, though, as probably most of you know, is we need to do something with the skim milk or it doesn't become a profitable product for us. And so the complexity we have now is, all right, we have this great demand for heavy cream, but as probably most of you know, when it comes to yogurt, you're seeing probably a decline in non-fat and low-fat yogurt, which is what we usually do with our skim milk. And so now for me as a processor, okay, I have to try to fulfill the heavy cream, you know, am I selling the skim in bulk? Am I selling the skim in bottles? And some of the actually co-ops that we're really close with have actually mentioned to us, Anthony, if you put it in a, you know, in a half-gallon container and sell it as skim, we'll try to sell it for you, you know, when you have extra. So, I mean, that just shows the partnership between us and the co-ops. Um, and, you know, so those are just some of the complexities I know right off the top of my head in the, you know, few months I've been on the job here. So, but it is, to Olga's point, it's a lot more, you know, complicated than that when it comes to balancing milk every week. How many gallons of whole milk are we going to use? All right, then we have to cut some skim, so skim products. So it's a balancing act every week. And that relates to the beginning of my story where I was telling, you know, we can only have up to so many cows on the farm, so we can only produce so much milk on the farm. And so now, if we only produce 900 pounds of milk for the, you know, for the day, averaging 900 pounds a day, like, can we make all this demand that we're getting? So these are a lot of the complexities I'm dealing with. You know, how do I get more pasture to get more cows? It is very complicated. And then on the machinery, right? Let's say I want to launch a new product, something I've been trying to get to. How do I afford a new machine that, you know, makes glass or can seal on glass? And, you know, so you're talking large capital investments if you want to launch new products like we want to. And so for a small farm like us that does about 1 million a year in revenue, you know, it's really tough to make a lot of these choices. But you know, I see us getting through these decisions and really helping grow the farm so we get more of our product out to more of you.
I'm going to crowdsource this group and say, put in the chat what flavor yogurt you want Butterworks to start making in the future. Just throw them in there. I think that would be helpful. All right, Erica, you're unmuted. What would you like to
Yes.
share?
Well, I think that what you were just talking about was a perfect segue. We've been testing yogurt for several months now since Anthony started. He's had his foot on the gas, really pedal to the metal with this new product, which is really exciting for us. And we just recently tried a new recipe in the plant, and we had the opportunity to taste it before this meeting. And I can tell you it was delicious. It is a strawberry yogurt and was able to achieve a thicker consistency that we've been going for in the product. So I feel like this is a big step forward, and that's the first new product that you all should be looking for. And we're also considering, as Anthony was just saying, doing some maybe skim milk products to help so that we can separate more milk and make the heavy cream. I did see a question come through about, is Butterworks milking 60 cows now? And that we're not. We're actually milking about anywhere between 30 and 40. We're at about 36 right now. But the goal, again, is to grow the business and grow sales. So that's where we would peak out here. If we had 60 animals, we have enough pasture to graze them and milk them here.
Thanks, Erica. I am going to ask you all the same question about the certified organic. And I know you're also Real Organic certified. So I was wondering if, you know, you can explain. Anthony, you've said a bit about like the reason why we've got the farm is really about like human health. I'm curious, Erica, do you have any perspectives, you know, Anthony too, about why what the label means? You know, what does that really mean in the marketplace? What is one thing you'd want to convey to consumers about why you go through the hassles of certification?
I can speak to that one. And it is a lot of paperwork and a lot of rules that need to be followed. The importance of the label is telling the consumer that there's no chemicals. Also, the rules that are important for animal welfare. So there's value there to a consumer that wants to know that they're putting healthier food in their body that doesn't have toxic chemicals in it, that treats their animals to a certain standard that vets have to approve of. And they can feel better about eating that product. And I think the more that people are educated about the label, the better. And I'm really grateful for the work that you're doing under the Northeast Organic Family Farm Partnership, Olga. I think that's even more important to educate the consumer in a broader way and how important that small family farm is and how different that looks.
Thanks, Erica. So I'm gonna go to Annie here, and I'm gonna ask you a question that was put in the chat here about certification in MOFGA. Annie was on the board of MOFGA, and could probably speak to, farmers can choose who they get certified through. It happens to be that most farmers in Maine who are certified organic are going to use MOFGA's, the Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association certification body. In Vermont, it tends to be Vermont Organic Farmers, so you'll see that label. But there's NOFFP of New York has a certification, and then there are other sort of national certifiers who could be certifying farms in our region. Annie, do you want to speak a little bit about just like what it's like to get certified and what some of these issues are that are coming up right now, especially around organic grain?
Sure. So MOFGA, or say all of the organic standards are set by the National Organic Program, the NOP, and that lives within the USDA. And so they're not the certifying agent, but they're the ones who, there's a board of farmers and processors that weigh in on sort of new rules and potential changes to the rules. And they set all of the rules. So then we have these certification entities, MOFGA Certification Services, which is an LLC that's owned by MOFGA. It's an offshoot of MOFGA. They are the certifying agent. So what that means is that when I get my organic system plan update, which is about a 40-page Bible of what we're planning on doing that year, I fill it out. It talks about what our animal care looks like. It talks about, if we have, it gets to the minutia of what we do for fly control, all the way to what is your actual ration throughout the winter. So and then it's this intricate calculation to figure out what your dry matter intake percentage is and if you're achieving the required amount or not. So it's a kind of a daunting process to actually fill out that paperwork every year. It gets easier as you do it more often. And then once a year you have an inspection, a planned inspection, I should say. At any time they can come and inspect your farm to make sure you're adhering to all the rules and following all the regulations. But you have one planned inspection at least a year. And that often takes place during the summertime when it is a really fun time on the farm. There's nothing else to be doing other than, spending the whole day with your certifying inspector, but it's a necessary part of the process. And that inspector will come and they will look through all of your receipts, all of your paperwork, everything that you have written down and made sure to keep track of throughout the year, and basically go through all of it, start to finish. And then they need to go out and see all of your cows. They also need to go look at all of your land that is certified. So on our farm, we own about 130 acres, but we also farm about 300 additional acres throughout our town and actually even into the next county, because as I said, we don't have all of the land base. We don't own the land base that we need. So we rely on neighbors, and we rent land. So it's a full day. They come at 9 in the morning right after milking. And by the time we're finished, it's time to start chores again. So can be a long, daunting process, especially if you don't have an inspector who knows about dairy. You feel like you have to basically teach them all about dairy farming, there's a lot to teach, as I'm sure you all can understand. But MOFGA has done a really great job in trying to bring on new inspectors, many who do understand dairy, organic dairy, and it makes the process a much, much more streamlined process. So one of the biggest requirements is that we do feed grain on our farm. We're not 100% grass fed. And that is because the nutrients that currently exist in our soil base, honestly, they don't necessarily provide all of the nutrients that are sufficient to feed our animals to get them in the best shape possible. And so what we do is we supplement with a very specific grain ration that we work with a nutritionalist who comes to our farm. He samples all of our feed. He was just here yesterday. He does it probably once a month. He'll come and check all of our feed and then to make sure that any nutrients that are missing in our ration from the feed that we've put up the prior summer, we can supplement using a grain mash. And it's incredibly expensive. And it has been a real problem for farms in the Northeast as grain prices really skyrocketed a couple years ago and kind of have stayed so high. And I know one of the questions was, how have we managed that? And I'll be perfectly honest with you, we went into debt to manage that. We took out a loan in order to continue feeding our cows because we knew, as I said, working with the cycle of the cow, if you were to do something to potentially, say you cut your grain ration in half in order to cut costs, that's going to affect that animal, and it won't necessarily just affect that animal at that moment in time, meaning they won't produce as much milk. It also leads to issues with reproduction. It leads to the longevity. It drastically cuts it and impacts it. And I think we've seen that, especially in the Northeast with the rise of feed costs. We've had a lot of farms scale back on how much grain they've been feeding. And that has not only been, evident in the loss of milk supply, it's really affected the health of our farms. And so we, as a farm, decided that we needed to just ride it out and see at what point we could get to kind of the other side of it. So we took out a loan, and we're doing what I like to call financial gymnastics all the time, but that involves consistently running our cost of production. I try to keep really on the pulse of what's going on financially on our farm in order to stay in the game, because you have to. And if anybody who's farming now, dairy farming now, and still dairy farming today is a master of many trades, and that cannot be under enhanced. It's honestly, you have to really be making sure that every piece is sort of lined up correctly. And I'm fortunate that my husband and I are very good partners in that way. And we both we manage our own piece of the puzzle to the best of our ability. And so we like to say that together we make like one really good farmer, but doing it on our own, I don't think we would be as successful as we have been.
Thanks, Annie. Every time I talk to farmers, I always walk away with like the best problem solvers I've ever met in my life. And every day there are problems, like big ones. And I would just say also then, like, you go again to the processor side of things for Anthony and for Erica. It's like that certification process is like double, right? So now you're also certifying the processing facility and the plant and those products that are going out. I was meeting with a processor yesterday who makes chocolate milk. There happens to be a shortage right now of cocoa in the market. And so try to find certified organic cocoa for his chocolate milk. It's almost impossible. But, like working through different supply chains and trying to figure out where can I find a certified organic product. These are like the complexities that come. It's just like such a small thing, but it's like that on top of the next for the processors. It's really, really a very challenging endeavor. I am just paying attention to the time, and my goal was to try and get everyone out a little early so that you'll want to come to the next one. And Suzette, I guess what I would like to do is I would like to turn it on you all, because part of the reason why we've partnered with NFCA and Suzette and Urban is to get feedback from you on what works in the stores. What are people asking? Is it really hard to have 3 different yogurts on the shelf? What is it like? How about kefir? Do we need a bigger kefir? Because Erica and Anthony are making a really lovely pint of kefir, and I'd like to see it get bigger. What are the trends you're seeing in the stores? And feel free to just either raise your hand or just unmute yourself, and you can either ask a question directly or let us know what's going on in your store. How about Jane? I'm just going to pick on you. Because Jane and I have talked about
I had to unmute. I wasn't too coordinated there.
Okay.
Well, I was going to make a comment, and we really liked it when it was made. Butterworks was making a quart kefir, and in fact, I noticed lately the small cups of maple yogurt have come back, and those are great. I'm really happy to have those on the shelf. We do sell a lot of yogurt, and the quart kefirs would be great if they came back I guess that's my only comment. I mean, I would take all the heavy cream. The people in my co-op that get a hold of the heavy cream before anybody else is the staff. I get emails, is there Butterworks cream this week? And myself included. That's the only thing I will put in my coffee.
I could speak to the quart size kefir that we discontinued before the transition. And it's interesting because Olga was just talking about all the challenges that we face in the creamery as well as the farm. And one of those challenges is staffing. So we had turnover in the creamery, and the machine that we use to go to the quart size, we were trying to transition between the sizes, and all the caps were popping off, which is a huge food safety issue, yet another challenge. So we had to move away from that. However, now the plant is very well staffed, and we're looking at getting that machine able to transition back to the quart size. So fingers crossed, we'll see what happens.
Anyone else want to speak up? Jane, I'm going to keep you on. You can't get distracted yet. You have to stay with me for a second. I want to ask about seasonality, because you and I shared some emails about a milk supplier where there was a lot of seasonality. And this comes down to what Annie's talking about, like the challenges for organic, where there's not this like consistent milk production because you're feeding them the exact same thing every single day and they're not expending any energy because they're not leaving the barn, right? It's totally a dynamic system. And then this seasonality of the milk and this balancing that happens in dairy where you've got different fat content, different times of the year. What do you do with the excess? No one wants to see milk wasted, but there are times when shorting happens. And I know everyone's trying to prevent that. Customers don't like it. But I understand this is one of the like admirable qualities, I feel like, of our co-ops in understanding these cycles so that there can be some communication to the customers. I know that it's not ideal, but I'm curious how you're all managing those flows with dairy, with the ups and downs and the seasonality. Jane?
I will say the seasonality on a Stratford ice cream was much better this year. And our co-op is in Hardwick, Vermont. It's not a big place, but in the summer, it just booms. We get people coming from the Calais area and Greensboro from Caspian Lake who have tons of money. And I can sell products like lactose-free things fly off the shelf. Whereas in the winter, some of it I can't carry because I can't get the whole case sold before it's outdated. And so that's why I get a little concerned with the seasonality, because that is a group that will pay the price for Stratford ice cream and they don't blink an eye at it. But it was much better this year. But our business just booms starting like the beginning of May through foliage, I guess I'd say. And then it really starts to drop off in January and February. It's like nobody's here, but that's
Jane, what do you do to communicate about the seasonality and shorting?
Well, we put up signs sometimes. But it's like I've had animals, so I understand different cycles, and people dry off their cows at different times, and you understand it if you're a farmer, but I'm telling you, the people from the city just like don't get it sometimes. And we put it in our newsletter. We'll write a little thing. I mean, you can't believe I'm still putting out tons of information about eggs. It's like there's people that have not heard of avian flu, and that coupled with we get black dirt eggs. It's the biggest selling item in our store. They decided to pull all the hens because they were old and turn them into stew hens, and they aren't starting back up till April. Well, that was 60 dozen eggs that I was getting a week that I don't have right now. And so, plus another farm that went out of business so that I got an equal amount. So right there, the local eggs are like practically non-existent. And I've had people tell me that the egg thing was a conspiracy theory. It's like, I wish it was that simple.
Does anybody else have tactics that they're using, or are you finding, there's a lot of nodding going on, but are you finding the same thing in your stores around either the seasonality of dairy or, for example, the egg shortage due to avian flu? Is there anything like you're doing unique, different, trying new things? Mm-mm.
We just try to buy from as many different people as possible to combat
Right.
those sorts of things. I know that doesn't necessarily do any one person any favors, but yeah, we keep our supply line as diverse as we can.
Yeah, that's great. And I know how many distributors you guys work with. You work with a lot of distributors. Yes.
All of them.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah, go
Olga,
ahead.
I'd ask one question, I guess, of Anthony, Erica, and Annie. I guess is there a one if you would wanted to share one message that you would want our buyers and co-op staff to share with members and shoppers, like the tagline, the one thing, what would it be? Like, what if they were to, they're talking to somebody in the aisle, and what could be the one tip that they could say to those shoppers about your farm, about your products or your farm?
Anthony, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. She kind of stumped me with that one. Um,
So I can speak to that one. And I know all your consumers are different and they have different hopes, like in the food that they're buying. Is it good for the environment? Is it healthy for me to eat? How are the animals treated? And that's what I want to share with customers about Butterworks. We love our cows. They're not pets, they're dairy cows, but we love them and we treat them with that love. And the health of the product being grass-fed dairy is top notch. Plus, it's organic, and just that it's good for the environment as well. Anthony mentioned the regenerative agriculture. The grass that the cows graze on is carbon sequestering. And then when you first asked this question, I thought you were going to ask what to share with the co-ops, but I wanted to also say that I just have such gratitude for the co-ops that we work with. You guys do an amazing job promoting all the local farms. And I think that's so important to the region, and so much of what Olga's working hard on. And just that any opportunity that we have at Butterworks to work with you, be that come do a demo or talk to consumers directly, we welcome that, and we hope to have those relationships. And thank you so much.
yeah, and I want to add on that. The relationship with the co-ops is totally different than, we work with Whole Foods, we work with Hannaford's. The relationship with the co-ops is a real partnership. The way the co-ops treat our farm is unbelievable. They pick up the phone. I just did a podcast, last week with one of the co-ops. I feel like we're both working together on the same team. It's not the big company that I feel like, they're trying to see how much they can make on me. And so like the relationship is really, it's awesome. And, we will always do our part at Butterworks to make sure we keep that relationship strong, because it's the lifeblood of our business. I can tell you for a fact.
I'm just going to add
Thank
to
you.
what Anthony said, that what I tell people, because I straddle both the dark and the light. I'm in food co-ops, but I'm also in Whole Foods and other chain grocery stores. But the food co-ops are the last refuge of democracy in our food system. And just what you said, Anthony, and I'm not a producer. I'm an ambassador. I'm a food system foot soldier. So I'm immersed in it, but I don't directly, roll my sleeves up. But you observe enough and you see that stark contrast of support where co-ops treat you like family. Your baby is their baby, and they wholeheartedly want to support local food system as much as possible. Really, the emphasis on the bottom line, it's there. We all know it, but the feeling and the exchange it's reciprocating is like we support you and you support us and you support our community. So
I'll just say this is Kylie, and Kylie does product demonstrations for the partnership as well as Abigail. One of the things that we offer to all of the stores like yours. So, Annie, you didn't get a chance. Do you want to give it? Yep, go ahead.
Sure. I will just say that I think when people think about dairy and they think about milk and cheese and butter and all the wonderful things we can make with dairy, they often envision a cow out eating grass. And that actually exists on our organic dairy farms. That's how our cows live. And I also think that, especially for folks that love this region and all that we have to offer, and especially like the beautiful landscape we have to offer, that takes a lot of work. And the farms that, steward the land that people love, that it's part of this landscape, they are an important investment, and they bring so much value to our rural communities. And that's something that we can't get back once it's lost. And so it's worth supporting and worth investing in.
Hear, hear.
Right.
All right. And I will just say thank you. And Suzette, thank you for hosting.
Yeah.
I'll let you have the final words.
Sure. Thank you. Well, thanks everyone for sure for taking time, and it's always good to learn more about our producers and our farms in the region, and how we can continue to support them and support you, our co-ops. So we'll be having another NOFFP informational peer session in another few months, and we'll let you know when that will be. But thank you again, and thanks Annie, Anthony, and Erica for taking the time out of your busy days to be with us. It's important.
Thank you for having us.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, bye.